Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Stop, Look, and Listen. I'm your host, LeTroy Gardner. This week, we have award-winning film director, Jayson Johnson. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you having me here.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Well, pleasure to have you on the show and, just delve into all of the projects that you have going on, man. But first off, just take us on a fantastic voyage into the humble beginnings of a young Jayson Johnson.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a fantastic voyage, but here we go.
Okay.
I'm from the Chicagoland area, west side of Chicago, and I grew up, always watching movies with like my moms and my pops and stuff like that. And I was always like intrigued on, like, how those images got onto the screen, and it was just something that I always wanted to do. So, that led me to reading comics, to writing, to going into stage performances, and then that's pretty much the seed of how I got going. But I'm sure we'll probably get into it more though. But that's kind of how it started.
Okay. So why did you choose film over, like you said, comic books or television or the stage?
You know, I just thought that there was just so much glamour whenever you turn on TV or see something on video. It's just like, there's a lot of glamour to that. And that drew me to that because I was just like, yo, I want to do that. It
Hmm.
just seemed just magical. So that was something that I really wanted to do. And, comic books are cool, but, it just doesn't have that same like panache that, TV has.
Yeah. You remember like the first story that you wrote? Like say like even when you're a kid and you have like your G.I. Joe figures and you're like creating storylines with them or professional wrestling, like do you have any recollection of that?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of a different kid. So I remember we was playing with GI Joes, around the time when other guys were like discovering girls and stuff like that. But I was still with the GI Joes, and I'd have this friend. We had like these elaborate stories where they get blown up. We duct tape them together, and they come up like a new type of persona. So we had like these elaborate stories that we would have, going into like junior high, and it was just something that we always enjoyed to do. And of course, girls came into the picture and stuff like that. But it was just something that you just love, using your imagination and telling stories and stuff like that.
Right. Well, I mean, that's amazing that you kind of had a crew early on that you could bounce those ideas off of. Like just talk about the importance of collaboration when it comes to, crafting these storylines.
I love collaboration. There's a lot of like filmmakers that are just like, I'm going to write a story and we're going to tell it exactly this way. But uh, early on, I found that when you collaborate and you have like a good rapport with your collaborators, the story is just so much better. So
Mhm.
um, I'll go into like a project with a solid idea, let's say 100% of that idea. And then by the time, I get collaborators on and actors, other, filmmakers, maybe by the time I'm done, 60% of that idea will still kind of be intact. But that's okay because a lot of times it's way better than I envisioned it to be, because you have to let that collective creativity kind of, join forces, and then it becomes a superpower. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So yeah, I love collaboration.
Yeah, because I know, especially with the actors, how much leeway do you give them to just improvise and just go off of raw emotion or feeling of that character?
When it comes with actors, so like I'll have my dialogue written, and I'll let them know this is a guide, so generally speaking, this is what I want to say. You can use it or you can kind of interpret it how you want to, but I never want to put actors into a box where they have to say exactly those emotions, because you know I may, you're in Florida, I'm in California, and we have different lingos,
Hmm.
and depending on your upbringing, you might say something a little bit differently how I'm going to say, but it's the same message. So I like to kind of get to that person's truest emotion whenever they're speaking, those words. And if it's my words, great. If it's their words, great. But as long as it's true to how they feel and how they convey that message, then I think that's the way to do it.
Okay. All right, so like let's go back to I guess the point when you decided for sure that this is the career path you wanted to take. Um, just talk about I guess college and just some of the work that you put out there that continued to strengthen your skill set.
So truth be told, I chose my college major in the worst possible way.
How was that?
I basically, this is so interesting, and I haven't told the story a lot, but I chose my college on kind of like the Goldilocks method. There was three colleges that were, that I could go to. One was really far away, one was like, semi close, and one was really close to my home. So I
Hmm.
visited all three of those colleges, and I said, based on the party scene, I'm going to go to one of these colleges. And the one that was furthest away was a crazy party school. It's just like, there's no way I'm going to ever graduate here. And the
Right.
one that was closest to my home was like not really a college school, a party school. So I'm gonna get bored here. But there was one that was like 2 hours away. It was like, okay, I can go here. The party scene's cool. I might graduate because I didn't know what I was gonna do. So yeah, I chose that. And then when it came time to select your major, you go into like this ballroom with all the college administrators.
Hmm.
Every man and female that was like the head of the college had like business suits on, ties, and I'm thinking I don't want to do any of that stuff. But way in the back there was a guy that had like this red bow tie on, and he just seemed really eccentric to me. And I didn't even know what he was teaching, but I said, whatever you're teaching, I'll sign up and do it. Sign me up. So that happened to be speech communication, and that's how
Hmm.
I chose my major. Most crazy random way to do it, but that's what I did.
Okay. Well, your Goldilocks method isn't too far off, I'll say, from my personal selection criteria. I went and toured multiple colleges, and on a tour of my alma mater, I heard that the ratio is 8 to 1, female to male. And I was like, yeah, this is the college I want to go to because of
Yes.
the female to male ratio.
Sign me up.
Yeah, so that was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It was attending that college. Um, so like take us behind the scenes of your breakthrough moment. Like when you met legendary film director, producer, writer, um, the man behind the Godfather trilogy himself, Francis Ford Coppola.
you know, I'd love to say that a lot of this film journey of mine has been like this calculated thing. And, I did this and then that led to that. But, as long as we're being honest,
Hmm.
I came out to California. I followed a girl out here. I didn't have a job. And I actually didn't even want to come to California because, I'm from the East Coast or Midwest. And I always kind of aligned with people that were from the East Coast and Midwest. And I was just like, I don't want to leave here. People in California are kind of weird. So I said, yo, I'll go anywhere but California. And that's where she happened to get this crazy job that, pay for our relocation fees. They pay for like first 3 months of rent, blah, blah, blah. So here I go. I'm following her to California. I don't have a job. I
Hmm.
put in resume after resume after resume, and no one is calling. So finally, this one place calls. It happens to be Francis Ford Coppola Winery, and they're just like asking me all these questions, like, "Can you work weekends? Do you know about wine?" And I'm thinking, I don't even know what the hell this job is for because I sent out so many resumes. But finally, they were just like, "You're hired," and I was a wine steward for a summer, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing. People would be like, I'd like to have some Chardonnay. I'd pour them Merlot. It's just like, I didn't know what I was doing. But at the end of that summer, um, I got transferred to another, place in the organization and then met the art director there. And then he kind of took a liking to me. And then I got into creative marketing where finally I got to work with Francis Coppola. So long story short, it was completely random once again. So that's how that works out for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, from what I always hear with Hollywood, it's about those experiences where um, like you have to expect the unexpected and stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Um, like how long did it take for you to like really um like become entrenched in the Hollywood scene from that point of following your girlfriend to Hollywood to what to where you're like actually working for a production company or working with a production company?
Uh, Probably about 3 years. Um, I told my girl at the time that I wanted to become a filmmaker, and
Hmm.
she was like, "Oh no, that means you're gonna be broke." So we broke up, and I just that gave me the freedom to do whatever I wanted to do. So I worked on like some production skills and blah blah blah, and then finally I said I feel confident enough to work at a production studio. So
Hmm.
I did what I would not suggest your viewers do. I made up a fake resume, and then I went door knocking, and I said, I have all these skills, but the skills were real, but the companies were fake. So I had all these fictitious companies I worked at, but the skills were real. So I knocked on doors, and a lot of them said no, don't. The door said no soliciting, and here you are soliciting, looking for a job. So a lot of places said no, but one place said yes, and that's ultimately how I got my foot in the door.
Hmm. Yeah, all it takes is one.
You got to have the drive, So to your listeners, you got to have the drive. You got to go out there and do it. It's not going to just fall in your lap. You got to make it happen.
Uh-huh. Were there ever moments that you felt like giving up? Because you said it was 3 years. So did you feel like, I need to go back to Chicago or back to, maybe relocate somewhere else like New York and try my hand there?
Yeah, every day, I think about, the thought creeps into my mind. It's just like, what are you doing? Blah blah blah. You're not no spring chicken no more, and it's just I see people get married and have kids and all that stuff, and I don't have any kids, so it's just like it crosses my mind a lot. But then you have to think about, okay, well, you could do that, but ultimately, are you going to be happy? So, I think it comes down to knowing your purpose in life and knowing your passion, and just fiercely following that. And then if you could answer that question, am I on my path, am I on my purpose, then ultimately that's what you should do.
Right. Okay. So just talk about like the path and the challenges to becoming an independent film producer, especially as a black man.
Yeah, yeah, as black man, we gotta get it out the mud, man. I was just watching some YouTuber, and it's a female, and I'm not. I don't want to get into the discussion on is it easier for females or males, but I personally have an opinion about that. But I have to say, as a black male getting into this industry, I've had to get this out the mud. There's a lot of opportunities that I could have gotten that someone could just gave to me, but for whatever reason, I had to just apply myself and dig in and struggle and get it that way. So yes, it's something that um, if you want to be a filmmaker, if you're black, prepare to really struggle for it. But at the end of the day, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's something that you could look back with pride and say that I did it. No one handed it to me, and I made it because I had God, and I had the self belief in myself that I could do it.
Yeah, and do you feel like because of that, it gives you more longevity in the industry because you're forced pretty much to learn the whole gamut as far as everyone that I know in the industry, with a similar skill set, like a Tyler Perry or, Melvin Van Peebles, if we want to go back even further, or Spike Lee, like they pretty much had the same get it out the mud mentality, and they had they did it all. It wasn't just like one specific skill set. So do you think that helps you long term? Stay active in the industry?
I think so because I've done like those predecessors. I've done everything. I've done producing. I've acted. I've written, directed, and a lot of that stuff. It didn't necessarily come natural to me. I remember on one of my first producing jobs, I got hired to produce this Bollywood film, and they had like a small budget, and they wanted to film on Cal Berkeley campus. Cal Berkeley is a famous college. So me being me, I'm just like, let's do it. I'm gonna live up to the opportunity. Everybody put Cal Berkeley shirts on. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna steal this scene.
Hmm.
So I'm getting my producer chops. We're stealing this scene. Security goes by once. They don't think anything of it. Security goes by 2, 3 times. Finally, they said something is off here. And they said, you guys are legally filming on this campus. Who's in charge? And they pointed at me. All the Indians pointed at me. And it's just like, oh shit, I'm a black man. I'm supposed to be in charge of this. They pointed at me. Security is looking at me. My instinct kicked in. I took off running, and I'm just like, they're not going to catch me. I'm not going to jail, all this stuff. So I don't know where I was going with all that, but yeah, it's true that you have to learn everything about this industry and be prepared to take off running if you got to, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, talk about your creative process, because we mentioned in the intro that like you're working on numerous projects right now. From what I recall, it was about 8 at the same time. So, like, let's talk about your creative process, as far as bouncing from one project to the next. Like, do you feel like on Monday you wake up and like this one story, like that's where my head is at, but then Monday night an idea pops up and it's like it's catered to another story, so then you put some energy towards that. Like, how do you navigate those different projects?
That's a good question. I feel for me, I'm always trying to have a project in one of the stages of production, whether it be pre production or post production. So now I guess I have like, what was that, like maybe 7 projects that are either shorts or feature films, all in pre production. So they're all staged to go. But when I was writing these projects, I had a lot of like creative ideas, and you just try to uh, write those ideas like in a notebook as much as possible to kind of get it percolating to so they can form into a solid idea, and then from there you're just writing. But how I deal with creativity, at least with writing, is um, I will go out on the street in California and in Bay Area and listen to a lot of conversations. I think a lot of writers um, don't do themselves a favor by just listening to people, because people say the darndest things, and you can
Hmm.
use that in your dialogue. But I'll do that for some time. I'll write that down onto a notebook, and then from there develop characters, and then eventually a story. So when I have that, I feel like in this writing frenzy stage where I feel like I can just knock something out really well. So uh, that just occurred for me. I had like maybe 2 or 3 solid months where I was just writing every day, and out of that came um, a few short films, and then kind of like a third and fourth revisions of feature films I've been working on. So um, it just kind of hits you in spurts, and I think you just have to be willing to kind of take advantage of that.
Dr. Todd McLean provides periodontal and dental implant services in 2 convenient locations. They offer over a decade of experience treating patients, and appointments can even be scheduled in the evenings, weekends, or early mornings. Give them a call in Chapel Hill at 919-537-9774 or in Durham at 919-484-8338, or visit them online at gumsandimplants.org.
All right. I mean, you want to give us a rundown of some of the projects you have in pre-production and post-production at the moment?
Sure. So I don't have anything in post production. So my post-production now is just doing a lot of podcasts and media because I'm preparing myself to do feature films now. I've already
Hmm.
done 9 short films, so I think that I have it. We've done a lot of uh, film festivals. I think we've done probably 85 or 90 film festivals now and won 6 of them. So I think we have that covered. So now the next stage in my career is to do feature-length films, and I've written 3 feature-length films. The first one is called Counterfeit Cabernet, and it's about a wine vintner that loves underground Texas Hold'em, and he gets in way over his head with the wrong gangster, and he gives him an ultimatum: either you pay me my money or I'm going to kill you and your family. So the only way that he knows how to pay that off is to make fake wine and to sell it. So that's the premise of that story. A lot of seedy characters kind of float in and out of the story, and that was something that uh, I'm from Chicagoland area. I had friends that robbed banks and did all kind of stuff. So uh, I met a lot of seedy characters, and then I also lived in Napa Valley for some time. So I kind of married those two and said, "What if?" And that's kind of how I got that. The second one is called Roger and Me. It's about a aspiring computer programmer that's stuck in a dead end job. And after he finds out that his girl is cheating on him, he enters a all night hackathon. And while he does good at the hackathon, he falls asleep at the wheel on his way home and crashes into a tropical goldfish store. The next day, the judge he goes before a judge, and the judge sentences him to carry this GPS infused goldfish, and he has to get from one side of the town to the other, carrying this goldfish while other people are trying to separate him, and just kind of we're going over a lot of issues like white collar, blue collar, wealth gap, and all these things are kind of prevalent in the Bay Area. So that's the next one that I wrote. And then the last one is called Grip Tape. It's about a undocumented immigrant that lives in his van with his type 1 diabetic daughter. And once he finds that their medical benefits are being cut, he takes things into his own hands and he starts robbing convenience stores, which leads up to strip clubs, which leads up to a bank. So that was actually based on a true story of a guy that I read that robbed a bank and he got away on a skateboard. So I thought, wouldn't that be great with San Francisco with these great hills and everything? And I saw it and I said, this is a story I have to tell.
Okay. Yeah. So you said you become inspired by conversations creatively. I guess does like visiting a city or just going going to a new location somewhere, does that inspire you? It's like I want to shoot a movie here, and then you just create a story around that as well.
Yeah, like with Grip Tape, um, San Francisco has like really steep hills. I don't know if you've ever been out here, but
Yeah, my main job is based in the Bay, so I'm in Berkeley like 2 3 times a year.
oh,
Yeah.
next time you're out here, let's link up.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I remember we were I was going on a trip with some filmmakers to Santa Barbara, and we had stopped in San Francisco before we made the trip down, and we're all kind of mulling over all these film ideas, and they're telling me all these ideas, and I'm just like, whack, that's whack, that's whack. And then they finally said, well, what you got that's so good? And I just started thinking about like skateboarding and people going down these steep hills in San Francisco, and that was kind of like when I said this, the idea for Grip Tape. And of course they all mocked it, and they said it was the stupidest idea ever.
Uh-huh.
But I held on to that, and but a lot of that was inspired by just the slopes of San Francisco, and me loving skateboarding.
Hmm. All right. Well, as an independent filmmaker, like who do you go to as far as like a checks and balances system to like let you know like, Jayson, I don't know about this idea. Maybe you shouldn't go this route. Maybe you should scrap this idea totally, or you're on the right path, but maybe you should, add this to the equation as well. Like, what's your checks and balances system?
So I like to work with people that are established in the film circuits. So I'm working with John Fitzgerald, who co-founded the Slam Dance Film Festival, to polish these scripts.
Hmm.
Because that's a legitimate question. Because you could think that you have like this great idea, and then it's just like you ignore everyone's feedback and you proceed to make it, and then people are just like, what were you thinking? This is trash.
Yeah.
So I like to have people that have read like thousands of scripts, that understand the beats of the story. Is it a story that needs to be told? If so, why should I tell it? Why is this the time to tell it? I like to ask myself all those critical questions, and to put myself in front of those professionals that will kind of hold my feet to the fire. And then once I have a good sense of feedback from them that this is a viable project, then I'll introduce people that I'm close to kind of give me their feedback, because they're going to give you feedback, but you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt, because the
Hmm.
people that are close to you don't want to see your feelings get hurt, unless you have like some some mean friends or family. But um, a lot of times the people that are close to you want to see you succeed. So I bring it to them last, because I know that they're going to offer good feedback after you kind of gotten established feedback from people that are in the know.
Okay. All right. I like that. Um, like, walk us through the stages of um producing. I know you've done, like you said, a lot of short films, and you're getting into the feature films. But just talk about the stages of producing the film, and getting into film festivals, and then beyond.
Okay. So any independent film producer, filmmaker, etc., they're going to probably say the number one thing that's most important in getting a project started is you have to have the money. That's something that is a stumbling block for a lot of filmmakers, and rightfully so. But after you have the money and you kind of organize your project as far as these are locations that we're going to film at. This is what it's going to cost. This is the crew that we're going to bring on. Then you move into the fun part, which is production, where you actually are on set with your talent, and your filmmakers, and you're filming, and you're working long days. It's stressful, but it's fun, and it's just like it's kind of like this love-hate relationship with everything, because problems arise and then you fix them, and that's just life as a filmmaker. But then after that's done, you get into probably the most critical part, is your post-production, where now you're editing the film, you're promoting the film, uh, you're doing all your rights and clearances, getting it ready for wherever it's going to be. In our case, we want to do theatrical. I don't really care for streaming as much as other filmmakers do, but getting all these ducks in a row. But I will say these days, with the way the digital media is you almost want to always be in a stage of post production, because you always want to be promoting yourself. You always want to be promoting your film before any of it starts. So it's almost like you're doing it in reverse. You're kind of speaking it into existence. So it's just like, I'm gonna win an Academy Award. Have you got it yet? No, but I'm gonna get it, and that's kind of how it works. So you have to kind of speak things into existence.
Okay. Like, does the business side ever get in the way of the creative?
Yeah, 100%. Because like when you're working with like say investors, right? Let's say I want to do a film that is gonna rub people the wrong way, and then the investor says, "But how am I gonna get my money back?" And then you're gonna have to enter those conversations of, well, if we kind of dial this down and kind of dial this part up, then it'll be more of a approachable film. It won't be such a uh, divisive film, and then you enter those conversations that way. But a producer or an investor that is a producer is almost always going to have notes that they want from you, because the name of the game is to make money, not to always make art. And that may rub a lot of filmmakers the wrong way, but my job is not necessarily to make art, is to make money.
Right. Okay. All right. So like let's go back to last year around this time. When Hollywood was um dealing with the writers and actors strike. Like, how did that, from your end, how did that impact you? Like, did you have to pretty much halt all production or pre-production, and like, did you just focus on script writing? Like, what was your game plan during the strikes?
It didn't really affect me because we didn't have any projects that were kind of in that pipeline. But me being me, I feel like it's better to do something than nothing. So I spent a lot of time developing and writing my projects, getting them ready. So before the strike happened, I just wanted to do Roger and Me. That's all I wanted to do. But when that strike happened, and I said, "Oh God, this all of it's going to stop," and it's probably going to be down for at least 6 months. I said, "Well, let's go ahead and let's write, 2 or 3 films, and then that way we'll have a lot of things once everything kind of opens up to kind of push at AFM to make sure that we have a project to sell, and maybe even 3 or 4, because the idea is I want to I want to keep working, even after one film is done. I think that I want to do 3 films back to back to back."
Hmm. Okay. So, like, another, I guess, technology is kind of always being used to make things easier. So when it comes to Hollywood now, there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence and doing a lot of the work that humans would usually do. Like, what's your take on artificial intelligence and its progress in the Hollywood industry and filmmaking?
I think it's the greatest thing ever. Yeah, it's a lot of people they'll probably make a lot of people mad, but it's fantastic, because it's like, do I use it to substitute writing? No, but
Uh-huh.
it's a useful tool, and a lot of people, and I think writers in general, I get it. They're scared because you could say, "Hey, Chat GPT," or whatever chatbot you're using, "Write me a synopsis for this," and then it just writes out everything, and you're just like, "Oh my God." But so here's the downside of AI. It's going to give you a very vanilla interpretation of that. So as long as you have creativity, you can use Chat GPT, or some of these image generating things that are fantastic, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But use your creativity and then use this as a tool. So a lot of times how I've used it is, say, like, I'm writing something and I paint myself into a corner, and
Hmm.
I say, what, how could I get out of this? And then I objectively ask it, and then it gives me all these other options. Now, I don't take them, but I say, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." So I'll take a piece of that and a piece of that, and then I'll mull on it, and then I come to my own conclusion. So that's kind of how I use chatbots. But I gotta say, if as far as like these image generating softwares, the
Hmm.
way that they do like these establishing shots, it looks real. It looks fantastic. It looks real. So it's just like, why would I pay someone $10,000 to get on a drone and do this fantastic drone shot, when I just say do, 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 and then and then I got it,
Uh-huh.
and it looks incredible. No one can tell the difference, so it's just like, I can see where that makes a lot of people nervous and scared, but I think it's fantastic. I love it. I'm gonna embrace it.
Okay. So besides AI, what else excites you? About the future of the business.
I think the future of the business is always changing. We're kind of getting past the superhero malaise phase where, they put out these, you know, Superman 10,000, and then everyone wants to go watch it. And it's just like they spend $200 million and then they lose $100 million. I think that Hollywood is finally getting to the point where they understand that, superhero flicks just aren't the bankable thing that they used to be.
Hmm.
So now there's going to be a stage, or I'm sorry, a phase where we're going to get back to real storytelling. Maybe they'll kind of take the budgets down, and then you'll see newer filmmakers kind of come to emergence. And that's traditionally happened before. The last time we saw that was like in the 70s, where like the Scorseses and your Coppolas and your Brian De Palmas, they all got an opportunity because the films in the 60s were like these big bloated films that had these huge budgets that no one wanted to see. They were kind of tired of them, and we're seeing that parallel these days with all these superhero films.
Okay. What advice would you give to aspiring filmmakers who are starting out? Like, do you feel like going to film school is the path that should be taken? Like,
Uh, it depends. As I'm wearing this sweatshirt that says "Forget Film School," it depends. Like if you go to USC, you're not just
mhm.
going to USC for the school. You're going there for the contacts. So that's invaluable. But it depends on the person, because I met a guy that went to USC. He went there for 4 years, and he came out owing $250,000.
Ouch.
And then I'm just like, oh, that's cool. Where are you working at? He's just like, oh, I work at BuzzFeed. So he spent $250,000 to go work, at some place. So take me for instance. I didn't go to film school. I went to a communication college. They had a radio, TV, and film department that it was more geared towards the news. But I said, okay, well, I'm gonna fake it till I make it. I'm gonna, knock on doors. I'm gonna say I'm gonna do things when I ain't really do them, and I'm just gonna make a way. So I think it just depends on the person. You have to have that drive. You got to have that dog in you to be successful in this industry. For those that don't have someone that is kind of already established. If you have like your dad that's an actor already, then yeah, that's great. But if you don't have that, you have to kind of figure it out yourself. So especially if you black, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
yeah, get ready.
All right. So, what's something about you that people find most surprising?
um, I don't know if it's surprising or not, but there's no quit in me, so it's just like I've been knocked down hundreds of times, and I always get back up. So I have that perseverance in me. I have that belief in me, and it's just that uh, if I can do it, then you can do it, because there's nothing really special about me.
Hmm. Cool. All right. So, instead of asking like a Mount Rushmore question as far as your four favorite films, I want to know the four films you wish you had directed and
Oh,
why.
wow, yeah. I wish I'm gonna probably name off a couple that you may or may not know. The first one is called Real Genius. I think it was directed by Martha Coolidge in, I want to say, 87 or so.
Hmm.
That film, I I would say that film because I think that film made me want to be a filmmaker. I watched that film probably at least 100 and plus times. It's just I don't know what it is, but that was one of Val Kilmer's early films, and it's just like that made me feel like I can do this. I want to be a filmmaker. Um, I say Harlem Nights because Eddie Murphy actually directed that. But the opportunity to direct Eddie Murphy, Red Fox, Richard Pryor, Della Reese, all these all these famous, Black icons,
Mhm.
got to be in this film. And it's just like, that's something that, I would love to do. And I think that we would have a great time.
Yeah.
Probably sneak Friday in that too. I would love to, work with the early Chris Tucker, so,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And then last one, I'd say, there's a Federico Fellini film called Eight and a Half. Fantastic film. Just the cinematography on it is just amazing. It's an old black and white film that, if you're a filmmaker, then you've probably seen it. If you're not, then maybe, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it's just a beautiful film. So, I want to be associated with something that's just great. And,
Mhm.
I see that film as, one of the great films of all time.
Okay. All right. So like looking at your vision board, like where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Do you still see yourself working exclusively in film? Do you see television or doing stage work or comics or cartoons? Uh, what's in your future?
Um, I think it's wide open. I'm open to it, but I know that I want to make these three films. I'm also really into fashion, so I'm going to grow the Strike Five brand into a film streetwear
Hmm.
brand. And then I next year I'm planning on starting a nonprofit called Forget Film School that will connect inner city kids that have a desire to learn film with emerging filmmakers, and then as they kind of go on their path, they intersect, and those kids will have an opportunity to have a direct contact with someone that's in the industry.
Okay.
Because I knew how hard it was for me, and I want to try to give back to those that may be following my path to make it a little bit easier. But aside from that, I see myself having a happy life. Probably a bunch of badass kids and a wife, and just living life in happiness and prosperity.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So I think it's important. I mean, I want you to continue to talk about it. I was prepared to end the interview, but I definitely think you should shed more light on, just the importance of being a presence to those in, our inner city communities and showing them that you don't have to be in front of the camera, but behind the camera as well.
Yeah, a lot of kids these days, they're just like, you ask them, what do you want to be, and they're just like, everyone wants to be a YouTube star, and it's just like they all want to be in the front of the camera, and not everyone is geared towards that. I remember when I first started acting, I go to all these auditions, they'd be like, you, not you, Jason, and then they would pick everybody else except for me. So
Hmm.
I had to understand that that just wasn't my path. But I could still be in it by making the content. So I think it's important to give youth that hope that it's still possible, even if what they originally envisioned doesn't come to fruition. There's many different ways to be in this industry, and probably being the creator of it is probably better than being the talent.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So can you plug where we can find you, where we can, find everything that you're working on? How can we support, the whole nine?
Yeah, so I've worked really hard to say this, but you can Google me now. uh, you can Google my company, Strike Five Films, and it's just spelled out as it sounds, Strike Five Films. Or alternatively, you can Google me, Jayson Johnson. My first name is spelled Jayson Johnson, and you should be able to find me. All of my socials will come up. I'm on pretty much all of them. I have a PR agent that is just like, you got to be on Instagram. And then I was just like, okay, I'm on Instagram. You got to be on TikTok. So now I'm on TikTok. You got to be on Alignable. Now I'm on Alignable. So it's just like, yeah, I'm on everything. So feel free to reach out, watch some of my films, buy some merch, support a brother.
All righty. Hey, I love it. Jason, it was fun. I mean, like you say, we kind of had similar mindset when it came to choosing colleges, and uh, you went to California following a girlfriend, and look what happened.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna see her years from now, and she's gonna be like, "Oh man, I didn't know he was gonna be that big," you know. So,
Right. So I mean, yeah. So I salute you. Like, powerful story when it just comes to perseverance and grit, and taking a childhood dream and making it a reality. So I salute you. And for Stop, Look, and Listen, I'm your host, LeTroy Gardner. See you next week. Peace and blessings.